Are you gonna miss the furs? Just tell me if you're gonna miss the smell of wet fur, Kit Harrington.
$1,000,000 mishaps, stinky costumes, and the inability to see or speak. Costumes can be a nightmare. Do you think the struggle is worth the fame and fortune? Well, you won't after this. Number 1. Did you know some of the worst costumes to wear in Hollywood are the super suits? Due to the fact Tom Holland had a mask under the Spider-Man mask, meant he couldn't just slip the mask off for a quick drink. Instead, he had to drink through a straw through the eye socket.
The helmet on the first film really didn't work very well.
He's had issues with basically every Spider-Man suit though.
As the last one, there's no changes. Again, I asked for a zip and I didn't get one.
The Iron Spider one being particularly frustrating because the gauntlets were making it tough to recreate the iconic thwip pose.
The hand thing irritates me. That's why when I shoot webs in the suit, I don't do this. I do this.
Number 2. Would you be willing to shave your head for $1,000,000? Millie Bobby Brown's baldness in Stranger Things is pretty tough for her. While she didn't mind shaving her hair, she's really found that it was affecting her self-esteem as she came into her teenage years. So she refused to keep shaving it and switched to a wig instead. Of course, self-esteem wasn't the only reason. She also refused to shave it because she had other roles in the pipeline that required hair. Number 3. It was a bittersweet moment to cut this scene in Everything Everywhere All at Once. One character was to be disemboweled with a sword where instead of gore, there was candy. Kinda like a piñata, we guess. The designer said, "We had a hard time doing it with practical effects, since the candy was lumpy, and it was hard to have it come out smoothly. So they animated the sequence instead." Number 4. Corsets are like mini cages that stop you from kicking butt. Millie Bobby Brown refuses to do any sort of corsets these days because it made the fight scenes in the first Enola Holmes movie practically impossible. It was so frustrating for her. She said, "I had to prepare my body to breathe and to move in the corset. It's hard navigating the choreography that you've learned so well in your trainers and your leggings and then switching up and putting an underskirt on. A skirt over that, a corset, then you have your petticoat, then you have your long socks, then you have your heels, etc., etc." Number 5. Why would anyone do this to themselves? At this point, we're certain you know about Jamie Campbell Bower spending 25 days getting into makeup at over 6 hours in the makeup chair. But something you might not be familiar with was, remember that one moment in Stranger Things where we see Chrissy Cunningham's father tied to a chair? Well, the prosthetics covering actor Christopher Strand's eyes and mouth were applied offset. Head makeup artist Amy L. Forsyth said he couldn't see. He couldn't speak. All he could do was hear. So he was driven to the set with no sense of where he was and then bound to a chair. This left him with very few ways of communicating with anybody. All he could do was nod, so it was all yes or no questions. Number 6. Boldness in the face of nakedness is far more intimidating than bravery in armor. Now that sounds like an inspirational quote. While Stellan Skarsgård liked how he looked super intimidating, naked as the Baron in Dune, it wasn't easy to pull off. The suit was so hot that he had to have a cooling pack inside of the prosthetic. But the part that was actually difficult was when he was bathing in the oil, the suit would start to float. So sadly, in order to get him dropped down properly into the tub, they had to carefully snip the suit so that the liquid would weigh him back down. Number 7. The Whale, rife with controversy, had Brendan Fraser doing some heavy lifting. His prosthetics were so heavy he actually found himself gaining muscle in places he didn't know he had muscle in order to carry them around every day. And he constantly found himself overheating, saying, "There were several layers and a cooling suit similar to what race car drivers wear. It's tubes that are crisscrossed and run cold water over your body. Mastering the right temperature was a challenge. My body melted 8 bags." Number 8. Are you happy with the changes they made to Gorr for the movie? Christian Bale actually planned on saying no to playing Gorr the God Butcher in Thor: Love and Thunder. Honestly, for 2 tiny reasons. One was he was teeny tiny, and in the comics, Gorr is pretty buff, and Bale was currently thinned out for another role. But he also didn't see any sense in competing with Chris Hemsworth's body. And reason 2 was some teeny tiny underwear. He would have had to wear a G-string because in the comics, the character only wears a cape and undies, and he just wasn't sure he could handle that. Luckily, Taika was willing to talk. Number 9. In Edna Mode's 30 Reasons to Not Wear Capes, we can't remember smelly and heavy being listed as reasons why they're so terrible. But that wasn't the case for Game of Thrones Kit Harrington, who, in every season, was gifted a heavier cape. The weight of the cape reflects his character's status, so as he becomes more respectable than he was when the show began, so too are heavy the shoulders that wear the cape.
The costume designer Michelle hates actors, obviously.
Number 10. Too many layers to a dress can make for a really long shoot day. Milly Alcock was struggling with her dress from House of the Dragon.
I'm actually like this because the dresses were uncomfortable and I've got a bad back.
Quit your complaining, Kit Harrington. At least you could sit properly with a cape on. Number 11. Yes, that's Lily's actual waist in Cinderella. She's held together by a corset that's too tight for her and a diet of only soup in order to stay in it. She described it as, it was like torture. It was so tight and delicate. We wouldn't be surprised to find out if she'd been having dizzy spells on set. Would you dare step into a dress that compresses your every organ? Number 12. Ralph Fiennes hated his Voldemort costume in Harry Potter because everyone would walk up to him and say, "Got your nose." He was just getting sick of it. Kidding. But he was relieved to finally get the costume off. One reason was the tights he had to wear kept falling, and they were irritating him. Ralph joked,
"Sometimes when the stunt team are getting too macho, I would tease them with my inner thigh."
Number 13. Diamonds aren't a girl's best friend. Carey Mulligan, for The Great Gatsby, admitted,
It was a little bit of a relief to take off the diamonds. I felt sort of a weight of responsibility wearing them.
the Tiffany & Company diamonds were worth so many millions that she had to be shadowed by a security guard. They were created specifically for the character, too. She said, "There'd be diamond bracelets on each arm and diamond earrings and rings and strings of pearls around my neck, and I could see this guy in the corner watching me intently, in case I ran off with anything." She did end up breaking the string of pearls she wore a few times, so the only thing she's guilty of is breaking the property, not stealing it. Number 14. When you find out how J-Law went to the bathroom, the whole thing kind of loses its mystique. Poor Jennifer Lawrence was practically nude in her X-Men costume, something she was definitely not a fan of. But going to the bathroom was next level in all that blue makeup. She had to use a funnel so as to not leave the toilet seat blue or herself needing touch-ups. Rebecca Romijn had quite the experience too, saying, "One time director Bryan Singer opened the tent where I was literally bent over a chair getting my crack touched up. And I was like, 'Don't come in here, Bryan, you don't need to see this.' And he said, 'You really need some white wine.' And he brought me some." All of this makeup takes up to 8 hours per day, so you better be on your A game if you want to go home at a reasonable time, is all we're saying. Number 15. Which is scarier, live-action Maleficent or the animated one? Angelina Jolie's costume was too scary for other toddlers and would make them cry, so in the end, they cast her actual daughter to play Aurora. Man, that would be a really tough day in the audition room. Maybe there are some good reasons actors hate their costumes, but we know we've only brushed the surface. Are there any costume nightmares you've heard about that we didn't include? Share them with us in the comments.